conversa que você vai assistir agora é com o Sean. Ele é gerente de remuneração de Total Rewards numa empresa chamada Vizier. E você vai conhecer um pouquinho mais sobre a experiência dele, sobre o papel dele, o que ele faz também dentro dessa empresa, nesse episódio. A gente falou muito sobre como alocar mão de obra e pagar por performance. Pensando em equidade também, pensando em como criar um plano de remuneração. O Sean trouxe vários insights aí valiosos sobre a palestra que ele vai apresentar aqui no evento. E também sobre a experiência dele em anos aí de RH. E também tem uma curiosidade que você vai acompanhar nesse episódio, que é a conexão que ele tem com o Brasil já antes de estar no 5º dia útil. E olha, eu preciso dizer mais uma coisa. Esse episódio, ele foi todo produzido em inglês. Então, se você estiver nas plataformas de áudio, corre lá pro YouTube. Lá você vai conseguir acompanhar o episódio todo legendado em português e vai ficar por dentro, não vai perder nada da nossa conversa, beleza? E esse mês de maio, é o mês da remuneração. Então, se você tá acompanhando a gente, sabe que esse mês a gente comemora 30 anos de carreira e a gente não poderia comemorar isso de uma maneira melhor do que oferecendo a você conteúdo gratuito e riquíssimo da imersão que a gente tá vivendo aqui, da experiência no Total Rewards 24, te trazendo também uma oportunidade de virar cliente da consulta salarial com 10% de desconto. E a gente vai também promover, em comemoração aos 30 anos, dia 19 de junho, uma experiência parecida com essa aqui, ó. Uma imersão. Você vai poder sentar no auditório da Unimax, que é onde a gente tem gravado os nossos episódios, se você está acompanhando essa temporada aí. Você vai poder participar lá no auditório de 4 gravações do 5º dia útil. Vai ser uma experiência muito bacana, um momento muito especial de conexão. E eu quero convidar você a clicar no link que está na descrição para garantir o seu ingresso e estar com a gente lá para conhecer a gente, conhecer o pessoal da carreira, conhecer mais 300 outros profissionais de remuneração e RH, e viver essa experiência do 5º dia útil. Tá convidadíssimo, convidadíssima. Então, garanta o seu ingresso e bora pro episódio.
Good. Você quer começar?
So, before we start, I have something for you. Look at here. Straight from Brazil.
I told you, baby, calm down. Calm down.
I thought there was no way.
There's
And you can see here, it's all in Portuguese reading. So it's really from
Okay.
Brazil.
All right, I'm gonna save it for after.
And I have,
Yes,
I have,
of course.
I have it's
Drink.
both for you, so you can enjoy it now or later.
Oh,
so
I'll have my coffee now.
I know
and
they
go
are
ahead
not
and
so
calm
big.
down.
yeah, need to be cold.
Oh, I cannot believe you did that. That is. That
When
is-
I read that, in
I
your,
can just live here.
yeah,
I can live
you
here.
can place it
They are
here.
brand
There,
ads,
I'm
like to show their brand.
gonna
So
put-
we
it's
can, yes.
sponsored, you know.
Sponsored.
No,
There you go.
Okay.
so
Enjoy it.
That is
Enjoy.
awesome. Thank you so much.
I couldn't bring Campos do Jordão, so I brought Guaraná. It was much easier.
Yeah. For you, Sean Lucians, correct?
Correct.
Oh, nice, man. It's a pleasure to be here with you to do this conversation. And I hope you enjoy with us today.
I will. I am sure.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Like you have great things to share with us. But first of all, what do you do for a living?
So you invited me to the podcast and don't know what I do for a living?
Yes, I know. But you need to
In
explain
your words.
in your
Okay.
words without jargons. This question is special, yeah, and let me explain you. Most of the followers that listen our program, they are not from compensation. When we think about the companies in Brazil, we have maybe like 5% of the companies, they have a structure to talk about compensation, rewards, and 95% they don't have.
Correct.
So when we think we are focused on this market, because 5% we have Mercer, Willis, Towers, Korn Ferry, Carreira, but we are fighting for 5. No, we are looking for 95. And these 95...
They're generalists.
Yeah, doesn't know anything about this. So when my question is good, like, because explain to these people that don't know about our market and all the things we do.
Okay.
To make it easier, you are a father of 3. Because I know it. I
Yeah.
looked at
That
it
is a
in
lot of
your
research you've
social
done.
media. Yeah, I told
Okay.
you. I told you, and I'm an expert on that.
For 3.5. I want to make sure 3.5 or 4.
Okay.
Take a side. So we had an exchange student from
Oh,
Sao
nice.
Paulo.
Uh-huh.
And so I numbered, this sounds awful when I say this, I numbered my kids 1, 2, and 3.
half.
And so she's 0 because she's the oldest. And she's still
Okay.
from Sao Paulo and everywhere. When she graduates, she says
Okay.
my favorite 0. So,
So
3
3.5.
plus my exchange student
Okay.
was from Sao Paulo.
3 plus 1.
Yep.
So how would you explain to them what you do? Because I know you do this for a long time. And how did you explain to them what I do for a living? So it's not
Okay.
with drugs. I'm not drug dealer. I know you.
I'm an honest guy.
I'm an honest
guy.
All right, so I have been around a long time, so since the last millennium. I am currently the general manager of Visier for the Total Rewards products. So we do talk about that. Since the 90s is when I started. I'm a development person by trade, so I'm code slinger, whatever you want to call it. I still that's my space. I love to spend time with the dev team, building new tools. Initially, back in the day, depending on people's age, Monster.br was one of the things I launched. So when Monster was first around, Fidelity's first 401k system, some stuff like that, and then got into Comp and Ben, Mercer in particular. I was there for their benefits benchmarking business, a company called Air Inc. for a while, Korn Ferry. Always building tools on the back end. To your point that most of these are practitioners, I've never been a practitioner. And my line actually that I usually say is, I don't want to be. That job just looks like it sucks. It's really hard. I was presenting, I don't know, a couple months ago, South Carolina, southern U.S. here, and before I went on, they were talking about their agenda, and it was to comp generalists, the bigger group, 100 people or so, and their next 3 months were legal, workers' compensation, active shooter, and benefits enrollment, and I thought, oh my God, like these people have to be experts in all of this stuff, and I just get to come up here and talk about compensation and software, like it's really important, and they have 4 other really important things. And by the way, active shooter, which more an American thing probably, but like that stuff is like way more important than comp planning. And to your point, so about 5% of companies, probably I'd say 15 or 20 in the U.S. have a comp professional. The rest of them are generalists, like having to be experts at everything.
This is a challenge, like to spread these kind of subject we have in Brazil and here in America. I think you have the same, like 20%.
And here you have a difference also that even when we have a TR professional in Brazil, usually he takes care of all the practices, like variable pay, like benefits, and so on. And here, in many cases, you have a professional, a structure that is really divided by practice. So someone that takes care only of benefits, someone that takes care only of variable pay.
Specialized.
I think it goes in tiers, though. I would argue.
Yeah.
Is that when they get to 500-ish ballpark, they get a comp professional. That comp professional deals with, benefits, comp, LTI, maybe exact pay, exact LTIP will be.
It's broader.
And then as they get bigger and add the next person, they start to carve that out. And so you have a general practitioner who has to know everything. And then the next layer, you've got somebody who, has to know everything about comp and do it all through the year. And then they start to get specialized. And all those are different groups of people that have to do their job and are supposedly experts at everything.
Yeah, absolutely.
Which is why I'm not a practitioner. So, be clear.
Good. Like you feel happy and fulfilled you doing what you do?
I do. I'm definitely a work to live, not live to work dude.
Okay.
If you didn't know that before you invited me, I'm a little bit of a trail hippie junkie outdoors person.
That I saw on Instagram as well.
Starting to be concerning. We're a couple minutes in.
Pay attention to what you post on.
This is for all the kids. Careful what you post out there. But I do like what I do. I like the problems. Throughout all the years, I actually, while I joke about not being a practitioner, I really like helping build products that allows them to do their job better, which is a little altruistic, but that's kind of how it is, I guess. Which is why I like doing a lot of the groups and some of the other things, because you really get to see what they're dealing with day in and day out. Because we sit and we start, if we don't get out, then we build software in a vacuum, and that never goes well.
Good.
I think the quote I use in some of my presentations, I'm not going to get it right because I can't read off my own slide, but humans are statistically highly predictable and amazingly individually unique. And so software in other places, I can put them on a bell curve. You can do comp, and you can put them on a bell curve. They're statistically predictable in mass, but anyone who's done HR realizes they're all individuals and they're all going to show up in your office with different questions.
Yeah.
Yeah, absolutely.
This is good. Like, it's not easy to understand. In both sessions, I was watching your presentations, and you have the same phrase, like, to explain. Like, it's not easy to go inside. And let's go there. The first one is, wow, 5% budget increase. We can finally do pay for performance. We need to talk about this. Yeah. And the second one is compensation planning. Oh, I think we can start with this pay for performance. How do you define pay for performance, and why is it an important strategy nowadays?
So first of all, I think it's 4%. So I like that you gave the group an extra 1% to work with. I like it. That's great. So if you think about it, the budget that's been handed down a lot of times to companies, World of Work pegs it at about 4%. I don't know, what is it in Brazil?
Yeah, it's
the
almost
average?
the same we have.
Okay,
Yeah.
even less?
Yeah.
So how do you actually, before you even get to pay for performance, right, how do you pay differently for those that are good performers and poor performers? And so how do you create dispersion when you got 4%? 4% is not a lot.
Yeah.
So if you take somebody who's making $30,000 a year and you add 4% on, you're barely covering Netflix,
Yeah.
right? Like, or any of the new subscriptions. So then the question is, how do you pay for performance? And so it goes back to, if you can get people on a good performance scale. So if we use 1 to 5 and we determine that Carlos is a 5, we're on now, so I'll call you a 5.
Thank you for
Yeah,
that.
I'm
Yeah,
trying to help
thank
you
you
out.
for that.
And I'm a 2, right? At best, I'm going to give myself an upgrade.
Okay.
How do we go ahead and split that payout? And so some companies will say, okay, well, we're going to give people who are a 5, 8 or 9%, and we're going to give people a 0 or 1 if they're down at a 1 or a 2, right? And so I can make that 5% in your case go significantly farther. You can start to cross-reference that with where are they in the range, right? So if I'm low paid in the range, even though I'm a poor performer, should I get more money? Versus Carlos, who, you know, is probably making a lot of money, right? Is he making a lot of money?
Not the case.
All
Don't
right,
trust
so
me.
Seems like
He
Yeah,
loves
okay.
you.
Huh? He's the only one with the collared shirt, so we'll go.
Yeah.
Yeah.
That was
So
me.
I got that spotted out. So if he's over, we've seen around 120. I don't know where it is in Brazil, but 120%. The money doesn't matter. So even if he's a 5, do we give him an increase because it doesn't change? And so you can start to create a merit matrix that makes sense to maximize your dollars. You can also start to segment your money out. So you determine that, you know, depending where you are, I always pick on accountants, so I don't know how many accountants are listening. I figure it's safe with HR people. So you figure that HR people are harder to find, and I want to pay them more because they're harder to find, and accountants are everywhere. Or in my particular business, it doesn't matter, right? They're counting beans somewhere. Beans are beans. It's fine. And so I might determine that even a 5 in accounting gets a 2, but somebody in HR gets, even if they're a 3, they get 8%. So I don't know if the term peanut butter spread, do you guys use that for comp pay?
Peanut butter.
No.
No, you usually just butter. It's
Yeah.
bread and butter.
Just
Yeah.
bread and butter. So if
Bread
you
and
think
butter.
about, you know, the old way of doing a 5% was I'll give everyone 5%. And so fundamentally, you're not driving pay for performance. You're not rewarding people. And if you do talk about pay equity, you just make a bad problem worse because you give someone who was underpaid a smaller amount than someone who was overpaid. And so the genesis of that discussion was, if I'm only given 4%, 5% now, how do I deal with that? Part of that discussion also talks about the cost of labor. So 4% sounds like an okay amount of money, but actually the cost of labor has gone up 5% in the U.S. Consumer goods pricing has gone up 6 or 7% the past couple of years. So 4% doesn't even get you to where it was 2 years ago. So how do you differentiate?
Guys, it's like performance is hard to talk. It's kind of a battle. Equity, equality, equal, equity, and performance. Because, of course, like when we talk about this in Brazil, for example, we have people that are in front of the others because of the good college structure, family structure, and all this stuff. So when you go to a company, you have more chances to perform than these others. So how can you treat these both subjects at the same place? Like, because performance, of course, we like it. 5% to Carlos. Carlos is looking for this one.
Yeah.
What do you think about it?
So pay equity, at least defined in the EU and in the US, is equal pay for equal performance at an equal job. So you've got to get the same jobs to be there. It doesn't matter where you start. Some places will have things, certificates. I agree with you. Sometimes you start ahead, but the reality is, and that's where this issue with having pay and equity happens, right? So I went to a crappy U.S. educational institution, so public school. And so I started lower in the range, and so you have to somehow catch up. And in the old days, you had to catch up kind of the hard way, right? You just switch jobs or do somewhere else. With pay equity, the goal would be over time, if I'm doing as good a job as somebody who went to a better school, I'm going to get paid the same amount of money within range. Pay transparency at some point is going to allow people to look and say, where am I in my range compared to other people? And I think that will also drive that, because you're going to have to answer why. Well, I'm doing the same job. I can tell at work I'm doing the same work as Carlos. Why is Carlos making more money than me? And the manager's either going to have to fix that or have that discussion all the time. I think it's hard right out of school. Because they pay for different educations or skills or what have you, and there's no chance to prove that you're better than the next person other than your education.
Having the clear reasons for the difference, if it exists.
Yeah. But all the pay for performance actually always goes back to the performance piece. And so I jokingly usually pick on the marketing team. So the marketing team likes to talk great about themselves, so they give themselves all fives, right? So that's what they do. We did a great job all the time. If a department gives all fives all the time and you're doing pay for performance, there's only so much money, right? And so if I get fives, but let's say I'm in dev, I'm kind of a little harder core. I'm like, everyone's a 3, unless you're really good, you're a 4, and if you're amazing, you're a 5. Well, if you don't have a way to technically spread that money out, more money will go to marketing because they're going to pull that money if you do it like in a giant Excel spreadsheet. And so, that's where you have to start leaning on what can I do with technology and other places to actually spread that money out, but be equitable so that you take out bias. Bias from departments, bias by gender, and not just pay bias, but over time, opportunity bias.
By race.
Well, but by race, but also opportunity bias. So what ends up happening is, I may not give her a promotion. Well, if I keep her in range, keep her in the same job for a long time, from a pure pay equity standpoint, she looks like she's paid high in the range. That's great. Look, we don't have a pay equity problem, do we? But we're never promoting women. So we have an opportunity equity problem that we need to address. And so the ability to look at all those analytics and kind of pull them together is really, I think, where the future is going to be. But to your point, if you're an HR generalist, where the hell do I find the time to go back in and pull all this stuff together? Excel is cool, but it's not that cool.
So if you allowed me, I will read my question because I want to make sure I am being understandable as possible. So how can we encourage them, so people to pay for performance, or encourage the pay for performance culture when the managers are so restricted by so many guidelines or rules? Because I understand they are important, because you need to make it fair. For example, when you talk about pay equity, we need to have some guidelines to make it fair, so we don't we don't use so biases or things like that. So how can we encourage the pay performance culture when we have so many guidelines? And how can we make sure that the managers have the flexibility to talk about it, to spread this idea, So how can we be creative about it? And I know you are in the AI field, so probably you're gonna to.
I wasn't gonna say the two dirty letters, actually. No, I was gonna see how far we could go without. So that's a lot in one question. You're testing my age to remember all that.
I'm testing my English as well.
I know. I didn't bring notes. Look, so she's got like a giant notepad to remember it all. I have to remember everything she just asked. So all of that actually, if you could get, I call it kind of blue skies, rainbows, and unicorns, perfect world where you actually went and had performance ratings that made sense and people did that the right way uniformly. So let's assume we kind of have that. Then you're talking about how do I pay equitably? And so there you have where am I in the range? Where do I put people in the range when they get promoted? That, if you think about a matrix with pay for performance, is how I can then basically create those increases. I've been using the terms get greedy. Does that translate well? That translate greedy? Greedy? What is greedy in Portuguese? Greedy? Greedy.
I'm not sure.
I want everything. I want it all.
Ganancioso.
Okay. Ganancioso. Yeah.
Okay, so
It's,
so like get greedy with your technology. So there's an economist. This is the only time I'm going to sound like a true nerd. Well, at least on the economy. So there's an economist called Kahneman who talks about having an anchor point. And so I think having the guidelines in place and creating an anchor point for managers is important, but giving them some discretion. And so if you basically create a giant matrix, I guess, right? And you've got performance on one side, you've got where they are in the range on the other side, you can create a range that's in there for every little point that's there, and that gives them a point to anchor on. And so that might be really at technology side down to the decimal point, and then you let the manager decide, okay, based on performance and other things, we're going to give Carlos you're going to get picked on a lot because I can see you, 3.25%. But he's been doing a really good job this year, so I'm going to go ahead and I'm going to give him 3.5%. They'll usually stay near that anchor point, but you've got to create that anchor point for thousands of employees, 500 employees. And when you change him, that means somebody else isn't getting money, right? So automatically you've got to be able to do all the rest of the calculations. And why I say get greedy is 5-10 years ago, you were limited in what you could do for pay based on time and technology, especially for an HR generalist, right? Because I've got to do my comp planning process now, and then I've got to do benefits, and then I've got to get people onboarded, and I've got some people getting offboarded, and I've got to do interview, I got to do all this stuff, so I don't have a ton of time. And Excel could only do so much. But technology now isn't a limiting factor. And so get greedy. Like you should be asking vendors, I want to be able to just upload all my data and I want the magic answer to show up and let it happen because like that's our problem now. And it used to be, we'd be like, I can't do that for you. Like that's great. So now it's like, get greedy. What is the strategy which you want to have? And then start to think that through. And maybe you can't get the whole way there, but you can get most of the way where you want to go.
Yeah.
I made a similar question to the other podcast that we made with Danielle. Do you think we see HR and compensation moving so slow in the past decades? Do you see that now with all technology and AI, it's a good opportunity to put everything to have AI helping HR evolving faster than it used to be in the past decades?
So let me start kind of from the opposite end, though, because this is where I usually go with any of the AI panels I've been on, is do you guys know Alice in Wonderland?
Alice no País das Maravilhas.
Okay, yeah.
Oh, yeah, sorry, it was in English.
Proposals,
got
so
it.
everything is good for you, like something like this.
Okay, that's good. So do you remember Cheshire Cat in the movie? All right, so that's this when I talk quotes, this is more my speed. So Cheshire Cat, I quote a lot, and it's if you don't know where you're going, all roads will lead you there. And so AI is cool. Our tech, I think, is super cool. There's other really cool pieces of tech out there, but what do you want to do with it?
Yeah.
And so you need to start with that. And so when you think about any given company, do I want to have a performance-based culture? And like, if the answer is no, then you don't need technology that does pay for performance. If you want to do it just on where they are in range, do that. You can get greedy with your strategy around, do I want to pay every department the same, every location the same? Do I want to do bonuses different? Do I want to do bonuses by pulling in all the data from the different parts of the business? Like, what do you actually want to do? If you could draw it out at the end and say, this is what I want our company to do, then you can still go find tech. There's plenty of tech out there. AI it's a great answer to helping, I think, more line managers. So what I've been telling people is like, nerds like me, I can write queries all day, right? That's not a big deal. The ability to have a natural language query, and I call them stackable, I'm sure there's other terms, but be able to put in there who's paid less than 20% of midpoint. Which one of those are women? Which one of those women have been here more than 5 years? And the query stacks on itself so that you don't have to type it in and retype the query. That's where I think it gets really cool. But at the end of the day, like, what do you want to accomplish? Like, what do you think is going to drive your business? AI hasn't solved that yet.
So knowing the business and knowing where you want to go and how you use the data you get is crucial also. So the professional skills remain really crucial for the whole process and guiding the future for compensation and for business.
Well, and the other thing I've kind of joked about is if all four of us work at different companies, right? And we all go type in the same thing to Google Gemini about what's the best way to keep my employees. What's the answer going to be?
Ooh, I don't know.
It's going to be the same for all of us, though. So are we all going to do exactly the same thing and pay at the 50th percentile? I recently was at a presentation, and I said, on the count of three, everyone raise your hand if you want to pay 50th percentile or above. Right? 1, 2, 3, everyone raises their hand, right? So everyone wants to be over 50th percentile. I'm not the smartest dude in the room, but like, y'all can't pay over 50%.
Do the math.
Yeah, you know, like you can't do it. And so how do you want to be different? And that's going to take, I think, humans for a while to figure out who are the important people in my business? What are the business drivers? What type of people stay here? What type of people don't succeed? Like all that stuff. And then you can start to lean into tech.
This is bringing the second one. Like when you have a compensation planning, maybe you can fight against this better or not. Of course, like pay for performance is part of this. It's part of the compensation planning, first question. And the second one is why it's so important. I told you 95% of Brazil, they don't have anything about it.
Yeah.
So we are suffering. What do you think, like?
So do they call it kindergarten?
Yeah.
Okay, kindergarten, right?
Yeah, yeah.
So you ever seen that book, Everything I Learned About Life I Learned in Kindergarten?
I don't know. What is the name?
So it's a book that basically says all the important things I learned in life.
Okay.
You know, like in
Okay.
kindergarten, like
Kindergarten.
sharing, other stuff like that. One of the things that you learn when you're early is if you take care of a problem sooner, it's better than if you take care of it till later, right? Although my kids are in their 20s and they still haven't figured all this out. but you know, the sooner you take care of something. And so the reason I think it's practical is, especially for generalists, is we've done some research that says, specifically around pay compression, but generally, if you take care of a pay issue within 3 months, employees stay 3 years. If you take care of it within 6 months, it's half of that, and if you take care of it in over a year, it could be even less. And if you do pay for performance once a year, or pay once a year, there's a bunch of people in your company that aren't going to get anything taken care of for 12 months. And so would you rather let the problem, you know, sit and dwell for a while, or would you rather address the problem? And so doing pay analysis and doing comp planning on a more frequent basis, I think just makes sense from a pay equity standpoint, because you're always hiring. Pay equity is difficult to deal with because you're always
Needs
hiring somebody new.
To help, yeah.
Well, and
Support.
it's always a moving part, right? It's we can't sit down to sit today.
Yeah.
We can go back and figure out and say, okay, today we're going to solve pay equity, which is expensive, by the way, because no one ever talks about fixing pay equity by reducing people's salary. It's
Exactly.
only by adding money,
Yeah.
right? So we're going to go ahead and we're going to add monies, and then we're done, right? Well, then we do increases, then we hire some new people, some people leave, we backfill those people, and now we got a pay equity problem again, right? So it's just always on the move. And so having multiple cycles, I think, can help that. You could do once a year for pay for performance. You could do short-term incentives once a year. You could do them quarterly. A lot of retail chains do them quarterly because things change all the time and the business is fluid. But again, do you think that affects the people in your company? Like we can do a lot of cool stuff, right? And I say we as the grander pile of development and software nerds out there, not just us, but a lot of companies out there can do some really cool stuff. But what do you want it to do? But I think the frequency piece can get tackled. And I think the other piece is hiring managers. Line managers. So the people who actually dole out the comp planning dollars, it's usually the manager, right? The manager sits down and says, okay, am I going to give, which one of you guys is going to get the money, right? Well, how often do they do that? Not very often, right? Once a year. And I know about a third of managers have never done it, or it's their first year. And even if you do it every year, like say you're a manager for 25 years, you do it 25 times once a year. I do a lot of things once a year, and I'm awful at all of them. Once a year is not a lot to be able to good at something. And so how can we give more information to them and make it simpler?
Yeah, it's always hard for line managers to manage HR in general, even more compensation. I think it's they always struggle in
well,
making
you didn't hire them for that. Like, that's the thing that I'm always amazed at. Some comp people get really up there, like, why don't these hiring managers understand this? I'm like, why don't you go put some stuff together on the assembly line? Yeah. Like, because that's what they were hired for. That manager is really good, at engineering or process engineering in a chemical factory or something. Like, that's what you hired him for. You didn't hire him to be good at doling out compensation dollars. But we ask them once, twice, 3 times a year, and I think the more they do it, and the effect becomes smaller. If you do it more frequently, people don't stew on it as long. You can fix things faster. I think comp and the HR practitioners can be more helpful because it's not once a year, I got to get this thing out, and then, oh, thank God, that's done. That was awful, thing. So I think it just becomes a better process.
Yeah, remember my first question was like, tell me about what you do. Like, when you look to these managers, like, they don't know about our subject, they don't know about compensation. So we need to do these steps like easier for them, because they are partner in this part. We write all the planning in all
the
the
rules
stuff,
and
but
everything.
they are at the
Because
front.
actually, who hires people who
they are at the front.
Manage daily.
they do this.
Well, and who has to go give? So, it's easy to sit down sometimes and say, you know what, we're going to do, we're going to give high performers more money to make it go further. And we're going to give moderate to low performers less money. Well, who gets to go talk to the moderate to low performers, which in some cases I've worked with for 5 years, and I got to go and say, Carlos,
Not
I like
this
you,
time.
but you get no money. And
Yeah.
that conversation sucks.
Sucks.
And by the way, Carlos, in theory, is coming back to work tomorrow, and he's just not going to be happy. Like, that changes my whole work dynamic for a while. So it's a very hard. Pay is very personal. It's the human and human resources.
Because there's a lot of expectations on it also.
And they're humans. Like, this is where maybe I'm a little bit of a hippie. They're still humans. They,
And
they've got a
actually-
family, they got kids, they're trying to put food on the table, they're trying to do all this stuff, and you are directly affecting that. Whether they're
Their
doing their
lives.
best or not, you're affecting their lives. It's a very personal thing.
And then at the end, when people leave, they say, I'm leaving because of my leader, because of my manager. So it's a hard job,
But I think, like, if you can do comp planning multiple times. So the reason in the comp planning thing, I think you stalked me, but I talk about it more than it's in there, is like, why do we do comp planning once a year? And I don't know how old you guys are, but I'm going to put Carlos and I in a similar bucket. It used to be so hard because you had to gather all stuff on paper, pencils, put it in the thing, write it on a sheet of paper, and then whether you guys have seen it or not, fax it to the payroll company, right? Payroll
a
company
life.
faxes you something back. You're kind of like, oh, crap, that's wrong. I got to do it. And then you got to get the payroll right. Payroll comes wrong, means cutting a check. Like, it was hard, like just hard to do. Now it's pretty simple. So the faster you can do it, the problem isn't as big. It's not a once a year big monumental moment. There's also the recency effect. So I don't know if you guys have ever talked about the recency effect, but let's just assume that you guys have been doing a great job all year.
Okay.
And while I've said Carlos has been doing a good job, we're going to say he's been doing a crappy job most of the year, right? But last month he did a great job on this one project, right? So in my mind, over 12 months, like, Carlos gets more money because even though you guys have been better through the year, because in my mind, he just did great.
Yeah.
And that's very common to have this recency effect. Whereas if you do it every quarter and you tie it to actual numbers and pull more data in, you can actually give them, again, this anchor point of, look, actually, Carlos, did this one project really well, but actually he only did 2 other projects worth this much money
Yeah.
through the year. Do you really want to give him that much money? Well, maybe I don't, you know.
Yeah. And an exercise for that is trying to find the reasons you do the movements you do. Like why you are deciding to increase this salary or that, or not increase this or that. Because you cannot remember what happened in 1 year. This is something really important, and I think it's a good food for thought for our audience, because it's always so hard to make the process sometimes that you take a life to have the process ready, and then you don't do it, and that's one of the reasons that you don't do it more frequently. But this is a great point to think about. How can you remember the performance? And it's not of only one person, but sometimes you have a team of 5, 10, or more people. How can you remember every one performance during a full year? It's crazy. So
And when
a
we
great point.
talk about pay transparency, it's not all about how much money do you make, you know. It's all about the system, how it works, and how I take the decisions, how the manager thinks, how the company, the business, where the business is going. So it's all about pay transparency. It's not about just the money you can.
Well, and again, the performance base, right? So I think some of my favorite managers over my life would give me 3s and 4s because they know that it's motivating. Like I want to do better, and some of the worst ones will give you 5s because they don't want to have the conversation, or their bar is so much lower. Are they really making you better? But that actually flies in the face of, you know, being equitable, because there might be someone else who's giving 5s away for free. You know, those two, if you put those 2 managers together, those managers side by side, I'm going to make less with one that I think is actually a better manager for me. And so how do you, and then in a company, you're going to have managers that aren't on the same page.
Yeah, it's like the player that is not going good, and then he scored at the last game at the championship, and then this is my star. No, of course
the
was
man.
not. Like, you know, this is the reason I have a book like this one. Fernanda knows about it. Like, I point every day about all my like Fernanda. Okay, today to the end of the year.
You
Like
don't-
Emerson, where's my 5? And Fernanda, let's talk about your 5. It's not a book. We have a system right now. Like actually, we have a system in the company that we have a place to input all these. Like if you got a good stuff in a project, you can put there. Bad stuff is the same. Like put all these, and then at the conversation we have at 4 to 4 months. We have conversations like to do this feedback and to talk about, not at the end of the year, like because.
But why don't we pay on that basis, right? So, you know, why don't we catch up? Why don't we do it quarterly? So, you know, again, I know there's companies that have no technology, of course, you know, still faxing payroll in. But, you know, if you're pulling that data in, you make those edits in the system and you're talking quarterly, why isn't she getting bonused quarterly?
Yeah.
You know, why isn't, you know, the company, you know, if once they budget for it, why don't they do it quarterly? Why aren't we doing, you know, semi-annual increases? Why aren't we fixing pay equity? Why don't we move our set aside through the year? Again, I'll say get greedy. Like, what would you like to do in the company? Do you really, some companies, there are places like once a year is actually the thing. Like, okay, that's fine. Like if you've decided that that's the right thing for your business, that's the best possible scenario. Sure. But is it really? Like, don't limit yourself just because it has been that long.
Yeah. You know, like, you know, a little bit Portuguese, and greedy could be ganância. Have you ever heard about this word?
Ganancia.
Ganância. You know this?
No.
Is the same, like you
Okay.
are telling the greed.
The
You know,
greed,
like
yeah.
people that has an excessive desire to more and more. Like this is, I think this is.
But yeah,
maybe-
and I say it from the standpoint of like, don't be afraid to ask. Like
Yeah.
Excel in the past was like, you know, I'm going to have 100 Excel sheets and I'm going to have to put it together, and Excel can only do this, so we can only do this. And again, if you're an HR practitioner, 100 Excel sheets, I don't want to deal with that more than once a year. Like,
Yeah.
it's just not a thing. And, you know, we're not expecting them to write code to concatenate all those sheets together to do all this stuff, right? They can't do that. But there's tech out there that can do that stuff now. And so get greedy, figure it out, and then go figure out, you know, what tech fits for you. And then I know you mentioned earlier, and I didn't want to forget, the data strategy is the other piece. So actually, I know you were stalking one of the presentations. So the 3 points basically around comp planning that we've seen really good companies doing have been, have a plan, which is kind of like, where do I want to be? The manager experience is really big for us because they, they have day jobs, right? They're real jobs. And then the last piece is have kind of a data strategy. I know you mentioned data. Pay for performance is a good example. If you really have a bad pay for performance piece, you're just going to put bad information in, and we're going to feed you, like it's math, right? We're going to feed you bad information back out. So you've got to have a real good data strategy. Where's my data coming from? Is it good? The good news is once you figure out where it's coming from in the system, then you don't have to worry about it again. Like nowadays, life's easy. You don't have to export it all the time. You just create a connection.
Yeah, the important point of having a plan for it is because people possibly are going to ask, what can I do to improve myself then? If you say I'm not performing as well as I should be, then what can I do for achieve this? And then you have to have a plan. You need to have a plan. So you have to say, you see here, to achieve this, you have to study or you have to develop yourself, I don't know what. So that's why we have to structure our payment strategy. So it's not just giving them money and thinking, now he's doing well, I will give him more money, because in Brazilian we can take the money back. Once you gave them the money, so you can take it back.
We cannot reduce salary.
Yeah.
So
which you don't see. I know we can in the U.S. You don't see.
Yeah, but
I mean, practicality, you don't see anyone get.
You're allowed to, but you cannot do it in
The
practice.
short term, but you can short-term incentive, STI or bonus is flexible, right?
Yeah.
I think the planning piece, though, what you tell them and how the mix is, that's the piece you have to be able to communicate. So that communication piece is really, really important. You got paid this because, especially when you start paying versus position and range, right? So if I'm a low performer and I'm lower in the range, and Carlos is a high performer but higher in the range, and I get more money. So in the U.S., part of the transparency piece is I can share now. It's not illegal to share how much I make. So when we go have a coffee and I'm like, I can't believe, I got, whatever, 20,000 reais increase. And Carlos is like, wait, what? You're awful at your job, Sean. How come I got half of that? Like, what's up with that? The manager needs to be able to explain, well, actually, because of where you are already in the range for the job you're doing, you haven't been promoted. Other people that are lower in this is for people who are lower in the range, no one in particular, this is how it works. And if they have like a company mix versus an individual mix in their bonus, like how do we actually explain that too? Well, I did great. I should get, 20,000, right? Well, actually the company performed at 80% this year, so you're actually getting 16,000 because they were lower, and you need to be able to give all that to the manager in their experience and not force them to go figure this out on their own.
Yeah, this is not easy. Like this equal pay when you put performance in this table, like to talk this. I understand your point, and it's not easy for Brazil. Brazil, we have a new law to control this, and we don't know what is gonna happen because the first report we had 2 or 3 months ago, like to show all the sellers in all these companies, all the companies we have in Brazil with over 100 employees. So,
So they have to show all the salaries internally?
Not to show the salaries,
policy,
but the comparison of these.
Mainly comparing women and men.
And men.
Oh, yeah. If you're
salaries.
over
So
100.
Yeah, it's an equity policy that is being placed now. It's very recent, so we're still growing on this, but it's a law.
Is there ramifications if you're over under, like UK is 5%? If you're outside of 5%?
Oh, I don't have a percentage to explain this. If you have some difference, you need to correct. So, but imagine if you have a plan.
Yeah.
I'm at the beginning of the band, and you are at the end of the band, maybe overpaid, like performance. So we have a different. But if I have a plan, a salary plan or something like this, I can explain, and it's okay. But if I don't have, as I told you, 95%, I don't have. So put correct, equal pay. Like you need
Thank
to
you.
go
then you
But
I
have
think,
90
but is
days
that
to correct.
you have 90 days, and is there a threshold like 5%? So in a lot of places, if you're inside 5%, that's considered acceptable. If it's outside of 5, then you need to have a plan.
This limit has not been set as far as I know.
Yeah.
So
So it's
far,
supposed to be
it's very
equal?
recent. Yeah,
need to be equal. Yeah.
Yeah, equal is equal. So far as I know.
Are they going to allow multivariate regression to pull that all in?
Yeah, the way they do this analysis is something that we could spend a day talking about because, in
not
my
easy
opinion,
even for
it
us.
is not something really well done because it's companies send their data based on and they make the comparison based on a code that it's really old. It's an official code made by the government many years ago with not much updates, and there's a lot of confusion on that. But the main idea, in the end of the day, is that I think in Brazil that we are facing with this is that we are looking for equal pay. That's nice. But we're just looking for the salary for that, and not for all the reasons for, like you said, we don't put women in higher positions and leadership positions, and that's why we have a lot of inequity on that. So.
Yeah, that's the multivariate piece. Like, how long have they been in service? There's obviously places that are like, some certain roles are predominantly men and women, and so then you end up with this kind of weird. The other one with 100 people that I'm very interested in, because parts of Europe are 100 or 200 people, is in some roles or probably in those job codes, there's not enough people to be statistically sound. And so will you be able to allowed to compare across other companies of that size if it's a defensible data set to say, actually, we're still not great, but we're not as bad as we look just one-to-one because we didn't have enough people in that role, to actually run any modeling against it.
Yeah, exactly.
But that's the hard part of pay equity. It's going to be moving all the time. That's like as soon as, so what happens actually, the use case I've used is you say you have 3 people, right? And 2 men and a woman. And so we pay, she's in the middle paid, but not enough to be the average. You move her up, the top person leaves, and they hire someone back below. Do you have to bring all the men up?
Yeah.
And vice versa if it's women. Like,
Yeah,
how does
exactly.
that? Because the law of averages is it's very difficult for companies to keep up with. And, and again, no one, I know you can't do it in Brazil, move the salary down. Nobody handles pay equity by moving people's compensation down.
Yeah, absolutely.
And so it's this game of changing money that's always going to be, are we going to be paying for pay equity every year? Or are we going to be paying for pay for performance? Because the pay equity chase could be so hard.
Yeah. It's gonna be expensive and not so funny.
Well, but then you're not chasing talent either, right? So then you think bigger picture outside of compensation. If I'm always chasing pay equity, then I'm not taking care of my best performers because they might not be part of the pay equity problem. And if you don't take care of your best performers, where do they go? Not with you, right?
Yeah.
They take off and go somewhere else where there's
else.
more money. And so by chasing the pay equity piece, if you can't keep your eye on the performance piece, what happens?
Yeah,
Yeah.
exactly.
There was another question. It'll be about trendies, but I think we talk about someone that is a huge trend right now, like this conversation we have. So, like, Sean, what do you think about this event expectations? I think you are gonna be these both present sessions tomorrow.
I have 2 sessions tomorrow.
Yeah.
I'm old, dude. I believe you. If you tell me I just look at my phone later, I go where it tells me.
But it doesn't really matter because when we are here podcasting, so the time and the space, it doesn't matter.
I'm doing 2.
Because
Yeah.
another universe.
People
Yeah.
can hear it or watch it in 2050. I don't know.
Okay.
So
Well, we'll
it
see what's
doesn't really
changed.
matter.
Yeah, it's a good
Lord
opportunity.
help me if I'm still working in 2050 though.
Working, no,
no.
I think hiking or riding
Yeah,
bikes.
yeah. Soon, I
bicycles
hope.
or
Soon.
And are you gonna do the best session in this event?
I'll tell you the session I'm excited about if people could see it. So there's a compensation technology one, and the people in that group are great. So
Yeah.
it's always about a panel. Is always about having one person on a panel that's good is never fun. Having the moderator's great. I'm on the panel with 2 other people who are awesome. And so that one's actually going to be great. The one I'm leading, I mean, it can't be great. I'm leading it, so it can't be that good. That one's the pay for performance one. And that one's interesting because we've got someone who's a practitioner who actually has to do it, and we have actually 2 practitioners, and then we have someone who's a consultant. They do a lot of tech consulting, and then myself, who's a nerd. So we have these kind of like, this is what you should do because this is the thing to do, and this is how great it could be. And then you got people who do it every day are like, there's just no way I can do that.
Yeah.
You know?
Yeah, we're talking about performance. This is the reason of my question. Unfortunately, I don't speak English like to understand 100% the things you told me, but I think I got maybe 60 to be like, wow. No? But I need to watch again these and to watch the translation, like to listen. Oh my God, why did I do this kind of question? Because take a look at what he's telling right now, and I was not understanding so good. You understand Portuguese like this? How many, like in percentage, you understand when you need to have a conversation in Portuguese? 1 to 100.
I understand a little bit. I don't speak any of it.
Oh yeah.
Yeah, no.
But you understand, like maybe like
Like, yeah, 10%, 20%, 30.
yeah.
Depends what you're talking about too.
Yeah.
Like
And how fast we
compensation.
speak.
Compensation.
Yeah,
is
and
hard.
how many?
After
How many
caipirinha?
caipirinha, cachaça we've had?
Then it's even
Then it goes
better.
faster and all together with
Yes.
no breaks. So that's
So
no
my
good.
English is also better when I drink caipirinha.
Oh, better?
Better.
I'd assume it would just get, most of even Americans get worse the more they drink.
No, I think I get more
Confident.
confident,
Oh,
so
okay.
that's why.
She looks like confident, but the real movement of her tongue was like a rah, rah. And
See,
you
that's
think
what I'm
that
saying.
the
She
best.
thinks she
Yeah.
spoke better.
Yeah.
But did she really speak better?
Exactly.
That's the question.
Have you ever watched
It's
that
because she's
movie
more
of Leonardo
expensive.
DiCaprio? What is
I'm
the name
talking
of
a
that
lot.
movie? Wall Street.
Oh, the Wolf of Wall Street?
Wolf of Wall Street. Remember, he was driving his Lamborghini. Was woo.
Yeah.
And then, but the real situation was.
Yeah, more or less.
It's the same. No. Yeah.
So I have to drink too. So
I
you
respect
can
you
really
a lot.
tell me.
And
See the concept he
Did
has from
she
you.
start?
Yeah.
Did she start early? Yeah. Are we getting all your questions? Look at all those questions.
Yeah, you see, in theory, I am, I am much better in theory. So you can read it and then you answer.
No, I'm
all the
old. I have to
questions,
get.
And then we.
Sean, I really appreciate you here in this episode to build our podcast. Like every episode, we have the opportunity to grow and to understand more and more about compensation. I'm from marketing, sales. I'm not from compensation.
He's also, you have a marketing graduation, don't you? I know.
Yeah.
Take a look at his
on
face.
The Flood
Yeah, but
State University.
Do you realize that was like our degrees came on stone tablets? Like, it's so long
Stone
ago.
tablet.
Yeah, I used that for a couple years, and then I got into the tech space. And back when actually, I don't even think they had degrees for internet stuff. And then I just lucky, found that space. But yeah, I have a degree in marketing, which I've used a little bit.
Good. Like so, but it's for us is a huge pleasure to be here, like with conversations like this. Carlos is connecting us with these Congress people like you. So I love it.
Yeah, I'm happy to talk to whomever, whenever. And like I said, I think the basics of stuff is it's all very complicated, of course, down in the weeds. But at a high level, what do you want to do? Like, Otherwise, you're chasing. And I think especially people that are generalists or one single comp people, they've got a lot to do, like way more than I ever want to do. And so take the time, which is hard to do, and have a plan so that you're not chasing the next cool thing that's out there that doesn't fit your plan. Like, why would you chase that, right?
It makes no sense.
It's super cool. That's great, you know, but it actually doesn't get me where I'm going because it won't fix your problem and you won't get budget for it, or you'll be pissed off you spent the money later. So figure out your plan, and then you can kind of, you know, figure out what data I need, and then you can figure the tech out. Because the tech nowadays, I mean, you can find tools to do whatever you need it to do. That's not the fundamental problem anymore. Yeah. Fixing the highly unique problems that every company has on how to get their people paid to do what they need to do, and every company does something different or thinks they're cooler than the other company, and so they got to have a plan for that.
I agree with you. Thank you so much. If I can, I do these the end of this episode in Portuguese, but it's slow, like not for you, like for me, doing something, and I think you understand, and then you translate like.
She brought me Guaraná, so you can do whatever you want. I cannot believe she did that. I was so stoked that she had this. That is amazing.
It's a little bit small, like, but it's like to taste and oh my god.
Yeah, but then I'll have to, but then I'll have to go all the way back down to Brazil to, to get some.
A bottle like this one. Okay. Então é o seguinte, se você não nos segue ainda, pô, segue o nosso canal, curta o nosso vídeo e, siga esse cara no LinkedIn para vocês saberem o que ele faz e esse mundo da remuneração que ele gosta tanto de estudar e ele compartilhou com a gente. What I told.
No, you lost me.
Yeah.
So, what did he say? Are you allowed to talk?
He's my boss, so I'm not allowed.
Are you not a subscriber? Please put your finger at this button.
Don't put your finger.
On this button,
and like this video and share all this content. And what else? I told to follow you on LinkedIn.
Yeah, and anyone wants to speak as long as it's in English, happy to chat.
Okay.
Wow.
See you.
Amazing.
Bye. Bye.